right, let's turn our attention to other stories. On Monday, we started discussions on Labour's demand for a new minimum wage of 56,000 naira for workers, and we will continue with that discussion this morning.
Presently, the minimum wage in Nigeria is 18,000 naira, and the NLC is insisting that it must change to 56,000 naira. NLC President Ayuba Wabba says the state of poverty in Nigeria has widened due to massive corruption in political office. He noted that the gap between the poor and the rich has become a major threat to security in the country.
It is on record that inequality gap have also continued to widen. The rich have continued to be very rich. The poor have continued to be very poor. In fact, we now have cases of extreme poverty where citizens cannot be able to have 3 square meals in a day. When you look at our challenges of development across Africa today, including the developed world, the issue of insecurity, if you look at what are the underlying causes, it has the direct relationship with inequality.
In our research, we have found inequality has reached extreme and dangerous levels and has put too much power into the hands of millionaires and powerful corporations. What's worse, a growing number of hate-filled leaders are gaining power by pretending to stand up for the poorest. But they are not champions for ordinary people.
The National Bureau of Statistics said that at least 54% of young people are jobless. So that we never benefited anything from the boom. And because of that, we must not allow a situation where we pay for a crime committed by those in power.
All right, we're joined again by the General Secretary, Peter Ozon-Eson, who started this with us yesterday. It's so good to have you join us again this morning. Yesterday, of course, we talked about a number of issues, including the call, of course, for increase in minimum wage. And you tried to tell us why there is a need for government to actually listen to the NLC because of all the different things that the average Nigerian worker has to contend with his 18,000 naira minimum wage. Now, I would like you to set the stage for us. Exactly how did Labour come about this 56,000 naira minimum wage that it is recommending?
Well, as of the time that this proposal was made to government, what we did was to take 3 different approaches to determine what would be the demand to be made. The first approach was to take 18,000 naira in 2011 and then to find the present value of that same amount today. That is, if you want to maintain the real value of 18,000 naira in 2011, how much do you require today to preserve that real wage? That was one approach, and that gave us a figure. A second approach was to say, let's look at what it will take to provide the basic necessities for an average family. If you have a worker who has a wife and say 4 children, the basic necessities of food, of shelter, clothing, medical care, and a few other things. We then look at that and we took sample surveys from different parts of the country and we took an average. That gave us a figure. Then thirdly, we looked at Africa and said, what is the average minimum wage among African countries? We are not saying Nigeria should even pay the highest. We just said, let at least Nigeria target the average among African countries. And we take that value. Of course, we adjust that value using the purchasing power parity index to ensure standardization for varying cost of living across the countries. And this computation gave us another figure. We took the three figures and took an average of them, and that is how we came about our demand. So it's not something that was drawn from the heart. It was something that was based on very systematic analysis. And that's how we came about our demand. But you realize that those various indices that went into that computation have since changed because of the delay in visiting the matter.
All right. Of course, we'll come back to talk more on this. We'll have to take a quick break and return.
Glad to have you back. It is still TVC Breakfast, and our focus right now is the demand for a new minimum. Put all those indicators and indices together. In all fairness, what should be the new minimum wage? Will the 56,000 naira still subsist in the Nigeria of today? But you hold your thoughts on that. We'll go on news update now. When we come back, then you answer the question for us. It is time for news update, and Ikechukwu is standing by.
Well, thank you very much. One of the 14 witnesses scheduled to testify in the case against Justice Adeniyi Ademola has confessed that she sold a BMW car worth 8 million naira to the son of the accused. While testifying at the FCT Higher Court in Abuja, a staff of Koscharis Motors, Ifeoma Ofonagolom, maintained that the cost of the luxury car was footed by Joe Agi, the third defendant. She further stated that the car was delivered to Justice Ademola's residence in Lagos and that his son took delivery. Justice Ademola was alleged to have abused his office by receiving millions of naira and a luxury car as bribe to impede justice. He is facing a 16-count charge of fraud alongside his wife and his senior advocate, Joe Agi. The case was adjourned to Tuesday. A professor of veterinary medicine, Aliyu Usman Mani, and 3 other people have died in an early morning attack on a mosque at the University of Maiduguri, that's Borno State. That attack was only one of 3 bomb attempts around the university. The Borno State Police Commissioner, Damian Chukwu, said a 7-year-old suicide bomber carried out the attack in the mosque. Another male suicide bomber was shot while trying to gain access into the university. His bomb exploded and killed him. The third attacker, a female suicide bomber of about 12 years with an explosive strapped to her body, was intercepted and killed at Barakaraya, a village behind the university. In other stories, the Nigerian Air Force says that its fighter jets struck Boko Haram's new hideout about 1 nautical mile south of Tambom Rego in northern Borno State. Air Force spokesman Group Captain Ayodele Famuyiwa stated that the fighter jets and helicopter gunship hit the location in a coordinated day and night operation following intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance. Excuse me. He noted that intelligence report showed that Boko Haram insurgents who attacked surface forces at Kangawa on January 12, 2017 took shelter at the said location. Well, that's the news. Now back to you.
We are joined again by the Secretary General of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Peter Ozoeson, in Abuja studio. Just before we went on the news update break, the question was, in all honesty, what would be a befitting minimum wage now based on the indices you used to measure the first demand you made?
Well, I think that what is to be, we have used the indices I outlined, but that is from the side of the workers. There are also indices from the side of employers when you come to the table that they would also want to bring on board. Among such indices that is also generally accepted worldwide is the ability to pay. So they would come to the table within the tripartite framework, and they will also bring their own indices and say, yes, you have done this, but ability to pay and other considerations would require that this is done. That is the process of negotiation until a common ground is found. So what would be the minimum wage to then be legislated is the outcome of a process. So what we have done in making our demand and in showing the computation and the methodology that has led us to the demand that we have made is to avail the other parties, the employers, the government, the private sector employers, an opportunity to engage and also bring their own indices and consideration to the table so that we can then collectively within the tripartite framework and then agree on a minimum wage value to so recommend. This has always been the practice in the past. It has been a practice not only in Nigeria, it is actually a practice that is guided by the ILO minimum wage fixing procedure convention. And that's all we are asking, that this be followed so that we can resolve this matter as quickly as possible.
All right, on that note, let's take this discussion a notch further. You heard Mr. Peter Ozoy-Son talk earlier about the review of some African countries, specifically South Africa and of course Egypt, to those minimum wages, or the minimum wage in those countries way above $155, and of course Brazil is somewhere around $200. Now the minimum wage is 18,000 naira. You already know that. That means an average civil servant will have to live on this salary until government reviews the demands by the labor. Now that's if government considers the 56,000 naira demand. But then there are questions as to if that would even be enough to cater for their needs. We'll look deeply now into that particular question. All right, the graph here already shows you the gradual increase from January. All right. This is, of course, the inflation rate. Nigeria's inflation rate accelerated to its highest in 2016, triggering a rise in the prices of food, commodities, rent, transportation, electricity, and other basic needs. Of course, you heard that in our first discussion, from 9.6% in January 2016 to how much? 18.55% as at December 2016. But then the question again is, as 2017 moves on, who knows what the figures will be by the first quarter of this year, Busolami. Now, the question then again is, how has this really affected the common man that, you know, would go home with 18,000 naira every month? Now, moving on. Okay, a bag of rice before went for 18,000 naira. You can be sure that that figure may be somewhere even more right now, 2017, January 17, as we speak. Now, the minimum wage cannot even buy a bag of rice. That's for sure. It now sells for way above 20,000 naira. Now, this change also applies to other food items. Bottle of palm oil, Gari Jebu, my good old Gari Jebu there, that has gone up. Vegetable oil, beans used to be a poor man's food. Busolami, I doubt it.
I never liked beans anyway.
I'm a lover of beans, but that's going totally way out of reach now. Beans, Gari, vegetable oil, and even yam all sell for double of their old prices. Now, a basket of fresh tomatoes, pepper. Remember last year there was the issue of tomatoes going totally way off the reach of the average Nigerian. Thankfully, that has changed, but it's still not necessarily within the reach of many people. Pepper now sells for 7,000 naira from its former 6,000 naira.
That's the basket?
Yes, that's a basket. Now, a basket of tomatoes goes for 8,000 naira, which is about 2,000 naira more than 6,000 that it was sold in previous weeks. Now, those are the daily needs of what civil servants who earn 18,000 naira minimum wage have to contend with. So at this point, let's bring in Mr. Ozoe Son. With these prices of foods and commodities going totally way off the mark, the question people are asking is, 56,000, how much difference would that really make now? Don't you think, especially with the 16-man committee set up to look at the demands of the NLC and, of course, the Trade Union Congress, that there might be a need to actually review that figure upward before going back to government to make any definite demand?
No, I think we need to get the process right. Let's start with the 16-man committee. The 16-man committee is not a minimum wage fixing or negotiating committee. The 16-man committee was what government is put on after it increased fuel to discuss what it termed palliatives. At that time, we said specifically that that was not the way to go, but it insisted on going that route. And it can go its route. That is the prerogative of government. However, you are right. From the review you have just made, you see the intervening period from when we did our computation, which was way before inflation rate at the time we did the computation that produced 56,000. The inflation rate on annual basis was 11% as of that time. Today, it is 18.5%. So the indices, various indices have changed. The exchange rate of the Naira, as of the time we made the demand that we made, was 197 Naira to the dollar. Today, it is 400 plus to the dollar, Naira to the dollar. So that index has also changed. Various other indices have changed. And so when you come to the table, we bring these facts to the table. You are right that given the cost of living today, that 56,000 may actually not be sufficient. You focus on the cost of food items, which are very important. But in the same way, we need to focus on the cost of transportation, because workers have to bear the cost of transportation in order to go to work. And that cost has shot up astronomically because of government's own policy with relation to petroleum pricing. Even right now, they are talking of other pressures even on the pricing. So all these are things that need to be taken on board. And the only way to take them on board is to come to the table to convene a minimum wage fixing committee. Okay. And that is what we're insisting on.
Okay, all right, Peter, we'll come back to you. We'll go on a short break now and return with more on TVC Breakfast. Stay with us. Glad to have you back. It is still TVC Breakfast, and our focus right now is on the demand for a new minimum wage. Our guest in Abuja is the General Secretary of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Peter Ozoe Son. Peter, now let's take a flip coin to the analysis we just made now. From your explanation, you have to go back to the drawing board, meet with the parties involved. And of course, you rightly mentioned that the employers, the private sector has to be part of this negotiation. And you're aware that just last year, about 1.7 million Nigerians lost their jobs. That mostly that is coming from the private sector. Now, talking about indices, it's not also the same for them. The tables have turned for the private sector. There are a lot of contraction going on in the labor market because of the forex and a lot of other indices. Do you see a case where the private sector will tell you they can't even pay this 56,000 naira, let alone increase it to the current situation?
Well, that is the beauty of this process, which I said is based on the ILO Convention for fixing minimum wage, the process, that you must bring all the parties together and let them look at the facts. You see, for the private sector, yes, the private sector is going through a lot of stress because of forex challenges and various other things, but also included because of poor demand for their own products. The private sector is interested in producing. When it produces, it wants to be able to sell. It only makes its profit when it sells. And for it to be able to sell, there has to be effective demand. And part of that demand comes from workers. Actually, a substantial part of the demand for the products of private sector producers comes from workers. And that is a part of the logic we are pushing. That if you have an extremely depressed minimum wage, then you are going to find that the aggregate demand by workers will be so low. There will be no demand for the produce by the private sector. And therefore, the private sector will be further depressed. One way of resolving that is to ensure that there is a living wage and that, therefore, workers are able to stimulate effective demand. A second important matter that we need to take note of is that at the lower rung of the pay structure, workers at the lower rung, who we are talking of minimum wage for, studies have shown that there you have the lowest marginal propensity to import in their consumption. So when they spend their money, the bulk of what they spend falls on what is produced domestically and not on imports. And because their marginal propensity to import is low, then if you raise their wage, you will stimulate demand for local produce and local production more effectively, as compared to giving more money to the very rich, whose marginal propensity to import is very high. These are considerations that economic logic takes us to address. And we need to take all these on board when we look at this matter. So the private sector, yes, is facing distress, but it also requires reflation in order for demand for its own produce to be stimulated. But the beauty of this process is that they will be there.
All right, let's bring more information very quickly. Of course, Ayuba Wabba, the NLC president, has said that an increase in wages will actually reflate the economy, just like what Mr. Ozoy is saying there. Now, there are other pertinent needs that the civil servant wants to achieve. He wants to think of buying a car, paying his rent, building a house, paying his children's school fees, and even have some savings. Can he achieve all this from his 18,000 naira or even 56,000 naira monthly earnings? Your guess is as good as mine. Now, it will not be out of place to say that the rich are getting richer and the poor getting poorer. A recent report by Weekly Trust shows that Nigeria's rich list is growing rapidly, even as the country's poverty rate escalates. Out of 40 African billionaires by Forbes magazine in 2016, 11 Nigerians were mentioned. And to add to that, Oxfam, the global charity organization, says that only 8 people in the world hold the wealth of half of the population of the world, and that's about 3.5 or 3.6 billion people. Only 8 people hold that wealth. All right, moving on. Recent reports released by the Director of Research and International Relations at the NDIC, that's the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation, shows that only 2% of Nigerians own 90% of total deposits in banks, while the remaining 98% have just 10% of total deposits. Now, what that tells you is that the gap between the rich and the poor has continued to widen in this country and, as a matter of fact, all over the world. While the well-to-do live comfortably at GRAs, that's the government reservation areas with full services of water, power supplies, the less privileged dwell in ghetto areas under seriously unhygienic conditions with no safe drinking water where there is any water available or light to illuminate their homes at night. Now, will the 56,000 naira minimum wage make a difference with the changes trailing the Nigerian economy now? That's the big question, and that's a question we have asked over and over again. Now, solutions, that's what really this chat is all about. What would Labour be recommending to this government moving on as a solution? Maybe not permanent, but in the short term, what are the solutions for the Nigerian worker that you think the Nigerian government can actually afford to put in place, turn things around for good?
Well, you see, in the short term, I think the quickest thing that government needs to do is to convene this process and let us agree on a new minimum wage. That is a starting position. Once we agree on a new minimum wage and a new minimum wage law is in place, then that is a first step. That does not mean that all the problems that workers face would then be removed. All it would do is that it would at least ameliorate the very harsh condition under which workers are currently surviving. And then, having done that, then government needs in the medium term to look for more robust policies to get the economy to actually function more efficiently and to get out of the recession. And it is only then, as we then get out of the recession, that we can continue in a gradual process to increase the position and welfare of the worker. You know, when a minimum wage is set, it is only a minimum. Through collective bargaining, you find that if the economy is improving, through collective bargaining, various sectors can agree as to how to raise wages. And I think that these are steps that need to be taken, but the first step in that process is actually to come and have a new minimum wage law in place.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Many thanks for your time and your thoughts today on TVC Breakfast. The Secretary General, Peter Ozoh Esson of the NLC. We didn't have time to go into the many theses of the NLC now. Some other trade unions springing up. All right, we appreciate your time, and that's it on this segment.